Prophecies, prophecies, prophecies. Let's get after it. All right, so welcome back. So continuing on in our biblical prophecies series, a critical examination, we are going to take a look at all of the prophecies inside of Genesis today. So after doing the whole, kind of database project where I compiled all 400 plus prophecies that I found across the entire Bible, we start breaking them down by books. And in Genesis, there are 23 total prophecies, 3 of which are Messianic, 20 of which qualify as covenantal. And most importantly for us, we have 3 of them we know were written before the actual fulfillment took place. And then as usual, we look at the mathematic probability of falsehood of those 3. So what we need to understand as we go through these is confidence ratings in each one of these particular prophecies. So I worked with AI to come up with this sort of a way to define how confident we are in each particular prophecy. So one being it was not understood as prophecy in first century Jews, and without hindsight, and there doesn't seem to be any evidence for its fulfillment or archaeological or historical support for it. So that would be the lowest kind of thing. It's someone has kind of claimed it to be a prophecy, but it probably wasn't understood that way, and there really isn't any evidence to support it. 2 would be claimed as a possible prophecy, but it has something of a questionable interpretation, meaning it could be, but there's not really good, strong evidence historically or archaeologically to support it, and not even sure it's like really prophetic utterance. 3 would be it's understood as prophecy in the Bible, but it's only affirmed fulfillment is in the Bible, meaning there isn't any like strong historical or archaeological evidence to back it up. The Bible says it happened, but we don't have any like real history or archaeology to support it. 4, then it is a clear prophecy. Maybe there's some ambiguity to it, but it is a clear prophecy, and it does have some historical or archaeological evidence to support its fulfillment. And then 5, then it is undeniably understood as prophecy and has direct historical or archaeological fulfillment. So we care a lot about the 5s and the 4s. 3, 2, 1, we can kind of, take with a grain of salt if we want. And then each of the prophecies fall into these major categories, prophetic categories. So explicit, it's a clear, direct prediction of specific future events, often with identifiable timelines, locations, or individuals, understood as prophetic by their original audience. Then we have covenantal, divine promises or blessing tied to God's covenants with individuals and nations, often predicting long-term outcomes, land, descendants, without specific timelines. We have typological, events, persons, or symbols in the Old Testament that foreshadow future realities, often recognized as prophetic only in hindsight, especially in Christian theology. Then we have hindsight, definition, passages not explicitly prophetic in their original context, but interpreted as prophetic by later communities, especially Christians, due to perceived fulfillment. Then we have messianic, divinely inspired predictions or promises in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, that is inspired by Jewish and Christian traditions as foretelling the coming of a Messiah, a future anointed leader or savior figure. And then we have the eschatological definition, visions or predictions of end-time events, cosmic judgment, or God's ultimate kingdom, often symbolic and open to multiple interpretations. So we care a lot about how confident we can be in the prophecies themselves. We care a lot about the category that they fall into because they help us give confidence about them. And then we really care a lot about whether we have a written down copy of that prophecy that was, written before the fulfillment of it. And we see 3 of those. Most of these are going to be associated with Messianic. So diving right into it, we have the first one, and the star here indicates that it was in fact written down prior to its fulfillment. So one of those like really strong ones. So the title of this one is the protoevangelium, and Genesis 3:15, very famous Christian prophetic utterance. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. The date that this prophecy was made was approximately 4000 BC. The category here is Messianic. We see the fulfillment in fulfillment verse here in Romans 16:20. The God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. This was ultimately uttered around 33 AD. And the historical archaeological evidence here, so there's no direct archaeological evidence for this prophecy as it pertains to spiritual and theological fulfillment. However, early Christian writings, Irenaeus, Justin Martyr from the 2nd century, have always interpreted Genesis 3:15 as a messianic prophecy fulfilled in Christ's victory over Satan's. And then we have the Dead Sea Scrolls that show the Jewish exegesis anticipating a messianic figure, though not explicitly tied to this verse. The universal presence of serpent imagery in ancient cultures, Mesopotamian and Egyptian iconography may reflect a cultural memory of conflict, but this is obviously speculative and not direct evidence. So the confidence rating that we get here then is a 3. We say it's a 3 because it's recognized as prophecy. It's only really affirmed biblically. There's no way to prove historically or archaeologically Christ's victory over Satan. And then we see the oldest partial and complete manuscripts are found in Papyrus 266 from the 2nd century, and the oldest complete, of course, being the Dead Sea Scrolls, circa 250 BC. So that has gives us the evidence that it was written down prior to Jesus' life, and thus we have the prophecy prior to his life. So we can say with confidence then that documentation of the manuscript was written before fulfillment. All right, so that's the first one. That's the protoevangelium. Then we go on to Genesis 9:25-27, and this is a curse on Canaan. So Noah said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of serpents shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be his servant. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." So this was probably uttered around 2340 BC. We see it is an explicit category of prophecy. Ultimately, we see a fulfillment of this in Joshua 9:23. "You are now under a curse. You will never be released from service as woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God." This is referring to the Gibeonites, often associated with the Canaanites. So this took place around 1400 BC. And the historical and archaeological evidence of Canaanite subjugation includes inscriptions and records from the Late Bronze Age, the Amarna letters, which describe Canaanite city-states under Egyptian dominance, later transitioning to Israelite control, and the Merneptah stele around 1208 BC mentions Israel's presence in Canaan, suggesting dominance over local peoples. Direct evidence linking Canaan's descendants to slavery is sparse, however, as Canaanite is a broad ethnic term. So again, we have sort of a confidence rating of 3 here. The same, all of the Genesis stuff is going to have the same partial and complete manuscript, so we're not going to go over them every time. But here we see the fulfillment was written. The fulfillment of the prophecy was done much earlier than the oldest version of Genesis that we have. Okay, so then we go on to God's promise to Noah about the earth's future. So a lot of promises that God makes, especially in the first 5 books, are also prophecies. Passage: "I will establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth." So again, probably made around 2340 BC, and the prophetic category is covenantal. So there is no specific verse that fulfills this. It's kind of an ongoing covenantal promise of God not to flood the earth. So again, there is no direct archaeological evidence that confirms the absence of a global flood. You can't confirm the absence of as the prophecy is negative, predicting what will not happen. However, there are a lot of flood stories in ancient cultures. Sumerian, the Epic of Gilgamesh, suggest a possible shared memory of a significant flood, indirectly supporting the biblical narrative's context. And then there's geological studies, sediment layers that show no evidence of a second global flood aligning with the prophecy's claim. So this one, kind of probably could be downgraded even to like maybe a 2 on our confidence rating. Give it a 3, and no documentation written before fulfillment. Now we have the Abrahamic covenant. So this is another kind of covenantal messianic type verse where we do get a star. So we have it written down prior to fulfillment. So Genesis 12, 1-3. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So this is made around 2000 BC. Again, it's covenantal and messianic. So a lot of times in these prophecies, we'll see that there's like multiple layers of fulfillment. So you can actually see fulfillment in some way through the nation of Israel, but then you can also see that this promise is also fulfilled in a messianic way through Jesus. That's what makes a lot of these prophecies so very fascinating, is there could be multiple fulfillments of these promises and prophecies made by God in various different ways that actually fulfill it. So in this case, we see the messianic fulfillment here in Galatians 3:16. The promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed, singular. Scripture does not say and to seeds, meaning many people, but and to your seed, meaning one person who is Christ. So this is the Christian interpretation of this. And the historical evidence for this is the spread of Christianity and Judaism globally supports the idea of blessings to all nations clause, though this is theological rather than archaeological. So archaeological evidence for Abraham's era, not Abraham himself, Ur of Chaldees, circa 2000 BC, includes cuneiform tablets showing migration patterns and covenant-like agreements in the ancient Near East, like the Nuzi tablets. And the existence of Israel as a nation is supported by the Merneptah stele and later Iron Age inscriptions, like the Mesha stele. So this gets a little bit higher confidence rating of 4. So it's understood clearly as prophecy, and there is some evidence to support it, even if it is not entirely direct evidence. So we do have, again, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, we do have documentation of this written down prior to the fulfillment in Jesus' life. So it gets a yes. Now we get the promise of Isaac and Abraham's seed. So Genesis 15, 4-6. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is of your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Then he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. So this is a covenantal prophecy around 2000 BC. We see fulfillment, the beginning of the fulfillment in this, in Genesis 21, 2-3. Where Sarah becomes pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age. And at the very time God had promised, and Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son. Sarah bore him, and ultimately this child would eventually become the father of the nation of Israel. And, obviously there are millions and millions of Jews even today, like the stars in the heaven. Fulfilled around 1900 BC. Historical evidence, so there's direct evidence for Isaac is lacking, but the patriarchal narratives align with the Middle Bronze Age customs, adoption, heirship practices in the Nuzi tablets, and the growth of Israelite tribes and later Jewish diasporas support the numerous descendants claim, though these these are primarily biblical. So it gets a confidence rating of around 3 and no documentation before fulfillment. We have God's warning to Abraham about Egypt. Genesis 15:13-16. Then the Lord said to him, "Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure." Made around 2000 BC, very explicit, prophecy calling for the enslavement in Egypt and a specific time frame. Fulfilled in Exodus 12:40-41. Now the length of time the Israelite people lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, to the very day, all the Lord's divisions left Egypt. This happened around 1440 BC. A lot of these dates, of course, are approximate dates because we don't know for sure exact dates. The historical evidence, the Hyksos period, are roughly 1650 to 1550 BC, and Egypt aligns with a Semitic presence, possibly linked to Israel's sojourn. The redemptive stele, 12 BC, confirms Israel's presence in Canaan post-Exodus. There is a papyrus, Anastasia 6, mentions Semitic tribes in Egypt's delta, supporting the enslavement context. The 400 years is approximate, aligning with the 430 years laid out in Exodus, and the archaeological evidence for the conquest, e.g. Jericho's debated destruction circa 1400 BC. That dating is contested, but it is relevant. So this gets a confidence rating of 5, a very clear prophecy with very clear elements identified in it, that it is then affirmed in the Bible, and there is historical and archaeological evidence to corroborate those claims. It does not, however, we do not have our written documentation prior to these events happening, so always subject to the typical kind of complaint of people about prophecy that, it was just written down after all the events happened. And yeah, sure, that's valid, which is why I'm personally so interested in the ones that we do have written documentation before the events happen, because that particular challenge can't be levied against it. All right, then we get the covenant of circumcision and nations, Genesis 17:4-8. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give you as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. So, prophecy about Abraham and his descendants around 1990 BC. It's a covenantal prophecy. Ultimately, fulfilled here in 1 Chronicles 16:16-18. The covenant he made with Abraham, the oath he swore to Isaac, he confirmed it to Jacob as a decree, to Israel as an everlasting covenant. To you I will give the land of Canaan as the portion you will inherit. This was made around 1440 BC, obviously in the era of the Exodus, when the Israelites were taking possession of the land that was promised to Abraham. And then, of course, the historical evidence here is the establishment of Israel in Canaan is supported by archaeological evidence. Again, the Merneptah stele and the Tel Dan inscriptions about 850 BC, which mentions Israel and the Davidic kings. And the practice of circumcision is attested in ancient Near Eastern cultures. For example, Egyptian reliefs, circa 2400 BC, aligning with the covenant's cultural context. The many nations aspect is theologically fulfilled through Israel, Ishmaelites, and Edomites, with broader applications to Christianity. So this is, again, a very clear prophecy with very clear details. So it gets a high confidence rating of 5. We do not, however, have this written down prior to the fulfillment of the events. All right, so now we get to Genesis 17:20, which is the blessing of Ishmael. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful, and I will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. Made around 2000 BC, another covenantal type. We see the fulfillment of this verse in Genesis 25:12-16. This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Ishmael, whom Sarah's slave Hagar the Egyptian bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, listed in the order of their birth. I'm not going to read them. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are the names of the 12 tribe rulers according to their settlement and camps. This was around 1800 BC. And the historical evidence that we have here, the Ishmaelite tribes are often associated with the Arabian nomadic groups in biblical and extra-biblical sources. Assyrian records mention Kedar from the 8th century BC. The Nabatean kingdoms and other Arabian tribes may trace lineage to Ishmael, though direct evidence is sparse. The great nation is less tangible than Israel's, but supported by the prominence of Arabian tribes. So we give this a 4, and ultimately we don't have any written evidence of it prior to fulfillment. All right, so then we get to the blessing through Abraham's seed, another star verse, Genesis 22:16-18, and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, obviously he was getting ready to sacrifice his son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. So again, we see another covenantal Messianic type prophecy. We see the Christian interpretation that this was fulfilled again in Galatians 3:16. Promises spoken to Abraham and to his seed, not seeds. So the interpretation here from Christians is that it is Christ who fulfills the blessings of all nations. This was done in 33 AD. So similar to Genesis 12, the Messianic fulfillment is theological, with Christianity's global spread as evidence, and the archaeological support for Israel's conquest, Jericho's destruction, Davidic dynasty, aligns with possessions of cities clause. So confidence rating 4, and then documentation of manuscript written before fulfillment, yes, and it gets a 4 here because and not a 5 because of the sort of multiple interpretations of fulfillment, right? So obviously Jews do not recognize the Messianic version of this. They only see this as a fulfillment through the nation of Israel. So just the kind of multiple nature fulfillment gets it a slight downgrade to 4 for me. Blessings of Isaac to Jacob in Genesis 27:27-9. To Jacob, may nations serve you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. To Esau, you will live by the sword, but when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck. This was made approximately 1900 BC. Again, it's covenantal type of prophecy, and we see a number of different places where we can see fulfillment here. First, if we see 2 Kings 8:20-22. In the time of Jehoram, Edom rebelled against Judah and set up its own king. So Jehoram went to Zair with all his chariots. The Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, but he rose up and broke through by night. His army, however, fled back home. To this day, Edom has been in rebellion against Judah. Libnah revolted at the same time. And then Genesis 37:7-10. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. This is Joseph's dream, interpreted as his brothers bowing down to him. And then in 1 Chronicles 5:1-2, We see the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, but because he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph as sons of Joseph, son of Israel. So what is the historical evidence here? How do we understand the interpretation? So Edom's revolt states that Edom rebelled and appointed its own king, breaking Judah's control. The Misha Stele describes Moab's rebellion against Israel in 840 BC, suggesting a regional pattern of vassal revolts against Judah Israel during Aram's dominance under Hazael. And then archaeological evidence, Edomite pottery at Tel Malhada indicates that Edom's growing autonomy in the 9th and 8th century, supporting the revolt's plausibility. So this gets a 3. It's understood as prophecy, but we don't really find anything that confirms it, other than the confirmation in the Bible itself. Okay, so we have the prophecy of Esau's future in Genesis 27:39-40. It's kind of a repeat of the previous one, but it's his father Isaac answered him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's swiftness, away from the dew of heaven. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brothers. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." So kind of the same thing here, the fulfillment wise, historical wise. So we won't revisit this one. Jacob's dream, then we get Genesis 28:13-15. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you, and you will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." So the fulfillment of this verse, Joshua 21:43-45. So the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to give their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there in the conquest. So this occurred approximately 1400 BC. The historical evidence, again, similar to Genesis 12 and 17, the Merneptah Stele and other inscriptions confirm Israel's presence in Canaan. Spread of Christianity fills all peoples clause theologically, and Bethel's significant as a cultic site is archaeologically attested, and Iron Age remains at Tel Betin. So this one gets a confidence rating 4, and unfortunately, no written manuscript prior to the fulfillment again. So then we get into the end of Genesis here, and he's going through all of his sons, and he's prophesying over each one, and making proclamations about what their futures will look like through their ancestors. So Genesis 49:4. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. So made around 1850 BC, covenantal, and this is ultimately filled. 1 Chronicles 5:1-2. The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, he was the firstborn, but when he defiled his father's marriage bed, his rights as firstborn were given to the sons of Joseph, the sons of Israel, so he could not be listed in the genealogical records in accordance with his birthright. And though Judah was the strongest of his brothers and a ruler came from him, the rights of the firstborn belonged to Joseph. So historical evidence, the tribe of Reuben played a marginal historical role. Plays no significant role in Israel's leaderships, no kings, judges, or prophets, settles in a peripheral Transjordan region and declines early in the exile, 732 BC. And then there's no direct evidence for Reuben's tribe, but its lack of prominence in later Israelite history, no significant, rulers, etc., aligns with the prophecy. And the settlement patterns in Transjordan show Reuben's territory, but no major dominance. So historically seems to be the case that the prophecy was fulfilled the way that it was made. But again, it's something that's only really found and attested to in the Bible, so it gets a 3. Prophecy against Simeon and Levi. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly, for they have killed men in their anger and hamstrung oxen as they have pleased. Cursed be their anger so fierce and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel. Covenantal again, fulfilled Joshua 19:1. The second lot, as they were taking conquest of the land of Canaan, came up for Simeon, the tribe of the Simeonites, according to its clan. Their inheritance lay within the territory of Judah. Numbers 18:20-24. The Lord said to Aaron, you will have no inheritance in their land, nor will you have any share among them. I am your share and your inheritance among the Israelites. So this represents Levi's dispersion as the priestly class. So what's the historical evidence here? Cursing Simeon and Levi for violence. Simeon is absorbed into Judah, as we see, and Levi's dispersion as landless priests, reflecting their scattering in Israel. Biblical texts and archaeological evidence from Beersheba and Levitical sites support their diminished role, with the Misha stele context reinforcing Simeon's marginality. Simeon's absorption into Judah is reflected in sparse archaeological evidence for distinct Simeonite settlements, and Levi's priestly role and lack of territorial inheritance are consistent with biblical descriptions of Levitical cities. So it gets a 3. Simply because, it's mostly just attested to in the Bible and not really historically or archaeologically. Prophecy of Judah's dominion. So Genesis 49, 8-10. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son, like a lion. He crouches and lies down like a lioness. Who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be his. This is covenantal with clear messianic undertones. And we see in 2 Samuel 7:12-16, passage, when your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, and I will establish his kingdom. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. So Samuel talking to David, making a sort of messianic prophecy of his own about his line and kingdom being established forever. And then historical evidence predicting Judah's tribal dominance and an enduring rulership until Shiloh is fulfilled through Judah's leadership in Judges and Joshua, the Davidic monarchy, 2 Samuel. This is confirmed historically and archaeologically by the Tel Dan Stele. And in Christian tradition, Jesus is the messianic Shiloh. And then in Matthew 1:1-17, we get the Jewish exegesis seeing historical fulfillment in Judah's kingship and future messianic hope. Archaeological evidence, again, like Hezekiah's seal at Lachish and inscriptions, support Judah's prominence, aligning with the covenantal promisey. And then it's clear in hindsight for Christians about the messianic kingship. So this could probably get a little bit higher rating, honestly. Like, I've got it as a 3. I probably should bump it up to a 4 because there is some historical and archaeological evidence to support the Davidic kingdom, and he comes from the tribe of Judah. So I'm going to say 4 here. I'm going to change that. So we have the prophecy of Zebulon's territory. Zebulon will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend toward Sidon. Fulfilled in Joshua 19:16-18, the third lot came up for Zebulun according to his clan. The boundaries of their inheritance went as far as Sarid. Going west, it ran to Maralah, touched Dabasheth, and extended to the ravine near Jokneam. It turned east from Sarid towards the sunrise to the territory of Kisloth Tabor and went down to Dabarath and up to Japhia. Then it continued eastward to Gath Hefer and Eth Kazin. It came out at Rimmon and turned toward Nia. There the boundary went around on the north to Hanathon and ended the valley of Iftah El. Included were Katah, Nahale, Shimron, Idalah, and Bethlehem. There were 12 towns and their villages. Sorry if I butchered all those words. So, historical evidence. This is fulfilled through the tribe's allocation in Lower Galilee, proximity to Phoenician trade routes and economic activity, and the archaeological evidence, Galilee sites, Phoenician artifacts, and the Mesha Stele context support this, though there are no direct inscriptions that name Zebulun territory near the Mediterranean. It does align with Iron Age settlement patterns, though direct evidence of maritime activity is sparse. It gets a 3, and no manuscripts written before fulfillment. Now we have the prophecy of Issachar's burden, Genesis 49:14. Issachar is a raw-boned donkey lying down among the sheep pens. When he sees how good is his resting place and how pleasant is his land, he will bend his shoulder to the burden and submit to forced labor. Fulfilled in Joshua 19:17-19. The fourth lot came out for Issachar, according to his clans. Their territory included Jezreel, Keseloth, Shunem, and Hapharim, Shion, and Harath. Again, I'm sure I'm butchering these words. Historical evidence, Genesis 49:14's prophecies describing Issachar as a strong donkey settled between the sheepfold is fulfilled through the tribe's settlement in the fertile Jezreel Valley. Their agriculture and possibly trade-oriented role and their minor status in biblical history. Archaeological evidence from Megiddo and Jezreel support the region's fertility, though no inscriptions name Issachar anywhere, and there's minimal evidence Issachar's territory in the Jezreel Valley suggesting agricultural labor, but no confirmation of forced labor. So this gets a pretty low rating. This is 2. It looks like prophecy, but it's hard to even claim that what is mentioned in the Bible is fulfillment of that particular prophecy. Then we get prophecy of Dan's judgment. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels so that its rider tumbles backwards. Fulfilled in Judges 18:30-31. There the Danites set up for themselves the idol, and Jonathan, son of Gershom, the son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the tribe of Dan. So what is the historical evidence to support this passage? Basically stating that Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel is fulfilled through Samson's role as a judge, and Dan's recognized tribal status in Shephelah and Tel Dan, and the archaeological evidence of Tel Dan and Zorah and the Tel Dan Stele context support their historical presence, though no inscriptions name Dan explicitly. And then excavations at Tel Dan, e.g. the cultic high places, confirm Dan's religious deviation, aligning with the snake imagery of deceit and trouble. Again, a 2. Prophecy of Gad's warfare, Genesis 49:19. Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but we will attack them at their heels. You could say that this is fulfilled in 1 Chronicles 5:18-22. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh had 44,000 men ready for military service, able-bodied, who can handle shield and sword, who could use a bow and were trained for battle. They waged war against the Hagrites, Jetar, Naphish, and Nodab. So what's the historical evidence of here? It's fulfilled through the tribe's Trans-Jordan settlement in Joshua. Its vulnerability to attacks attested to in the Mesha Stele, and military victories in Judges and Chronicles. Archaeological evidence, Tel Hispan, Tel Rumeath, and the Mesha Stele mention of Gad support the prophecy's historical basis. There's Transjordanian conflicts, mention Gad's territory supporting warfare involvement, but specific raids, as the prophecy says, are unconfirmed. So it gets a little bit higher rating on this one. Genesis 49:20, Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. Historical evidence here, this is fulfilled through the tribe's settlement in fertile western Galilee. agricultural prosperity and trade contributions. So archaeological evidence at Tel Akko and Akzib and Phoenician trade networks support this. No inscriptions name Asher's territory in fertile Galilee suggests agricultural wealth, but there's no direct evidence of delicacy. So this gets a 2. Prophecy of Naphtali's freedom. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. So this is Joshua 19:32-33. The 6th lot came out for Naphtali according to its clans. Their boundaries went from Heleph and the large tree and Zananim, passing Adami Nekeb and Jabneel to Lakum and ending at the Jordan. So historical evidence here fulfilled through the tribe settlement in fertile Upper Galilee, their military agility under Barak and Judges, and potential cultural contributions. The archaeological evidence supports their rule, though no inscriptions name Naphtali. Naphtali's hilly territory suggests independence, but no specific evidence supports the metaphor. So again, this gets 2 again. And then we have prophecy of Joseph's fruitfulness in Genesis 49:22-27. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arm stayed limber because of his hands of the mighty one of Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, because of your father's God who helps you, because the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the sky above, blessings of the deep springs below, blessings of the breast and womb. Your father's blessings are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountain, than the bounty of the age-old hills. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. So, Joshua 17:14-18. So the people of Joseph said to Joshua, "Why have you given us only one allotment?" Joshua answered, "Clear land for yourselves there in the land of the Perizzites and Rephaites." So the historical evidence for this fulfillment, the prophecy of Joseph's prosperity and resilience is filled through Ephraim and Manasseh's fertile lands, leadership, and divine protection, supported by Samaria's archaeology. Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's tribes, were prominent with large territories, and archaeological surveys in Samaria confirm dense settlement. So this gets a 4 based off of the archaeology and history that has been uncovered in the area. And then we get Benjamin's ferocity in 49:27. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey. In the evening he divides the plunder. Judges 20:21-25. The Benjamites came out of Gibeah and cut down 22,000 Israelites on the battlefield that day. Historical evidence, Genesis 49:27. A prophecy of Benjamin as a ravenous wolf is fulfilled through Ehud and Saul's martial victories, backed by Benjamite archaeology. Benjamite martial prowess is reflected in biblical battles, but there is no specific archaeological evidence confirming this metaphor. So this gets a 3. Only really in the Bible is it affirmed. Okay, so then now that we've looked at all the different prophecies, you remember there was 23 of them. Most of them were covenantal. Most of the fulfillments took place, long ago in the patriarch era during the time of Exodus, 1400 BC, etc. But there were 3 messianic prophecies that were fulfilled in the life of Jesus. So if we take this book and those 3 prophecies and we conduct a simple little mathematical exercise, go into AI and we say, I put these 3 verses in, I put the history, the evidence that we have, the documentation from the great, the scrolls discovered in Qumran. We put all that information in AI and we ask it to conduct a mathematical probability assessment of these things being false. What we get back is, for each prophecy, the chance of them being false, given the evidence, might be approximated to 0.001, so 1 in 10,000 after adjustments. The combined probability, however, if you treat it as independent events, a simplification, as they share a theological thread, the joint probability of all 3 being false is 0.001 to the third power equal to 1 in 10 to the 12th power, or 1 trillion. So 1 in a trillion chance that they are in fact false. However, since they are thematically linked, all Messianic via Abraham's seed, a more realistic combined probability might be 1 in 10 to the 6th, so 1 million. So reflecting the shared contest. So practical interpretation of this mathematical analysis suggests that it is a 99.9999% likelihood of at least one being true if we accept the fulfillment claims. This, of course, all hinges on the accepting of the Christian interpretation. But the mathematical probability here is pretty compelling in terms of, are these true? Were these prophecies written down before they were fulfilled? And then is the fulfillment likely based off the Christian interpretation? And if they are, what does that mean for their veracity or their truthfulness? And that's a near certain likelihood. Okay, I hope you like this video. I really enjoy doing kind of deep dives into these kinds of things. I like the history, and I like to put the pieces together, connect the dots, so to speak. So I'm going to keep doing one of these, every couple weeks or something like that for every book. So I'll move on to Exodus next, and we'll look at the Exodus prophecies, and I'll just keep working my way through the Bible until we wrap it all up and look at all 400 plus that we've identified in the database. All right. God bless. Have a good one.